Hello, guitar players. Have you ever checked out Schecter Guitars? Well, I'm here to tell you that they make some wonderful stuff over there. They're also my sponsors for this season, and I couldn't be happier. Rather than reading a bunch of ad copy and doing that traditionalized sort of commercial for them, they were doing things a little bit different. They sent me a guitar. They sent me their Solo 2 Custom. I am traditionally a single cutaway guitar player, and the Solo 2 Custom is Schecter's version of that, and it comes fully loaded, fully stocked, ready to play tonight at any gig. It has Tone Pros hardware, it has their Schecter locking tuners, it has their Schecter USA Pasadena Plus pickups. This thing's just amazing. For the price point, you would have a hard time beating the quality of this guitar. So go out and find yourself a Schecter guitar. Look them up at schecterguitars.com. You will be happy that you did. I just want to take a second to talk about DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and the artists get to keep 100% of the royalties. I will repeat that. The artists get to keep 100% of their royalties. Can you believe that? Anti-Heroes listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/anti-heroes. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/anti-heroes. Hello folks, have you ever checked out Jim Dunlop products or MXR guitar pedals? Well, I think you should. I am a guitar player, lifelong guitar player, professional guitar player. I've always used these products, and they're wonderful people. I would suggest you do the same, from their strings to their picks to their cables to the wonderful line of MXR pedals, the iconic Phase 90 popularized by Eddie Van Halen, the Zakk Wylde lines, the Jim Dunlop Crybabies. The list goes on and on and on. Do yourself a favor, check out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. Hello and welcome to the Anti-Heroes podcast with your host, Zach Blair. I am Zach Blair. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad you're listening today. I'm excited about my guest. Today we've got a Texan on here, and as I talk about, man, I have a love-hate relationship with my home state. I talked to Mike about it. My guest here today, Mike DeLeon. Hate the politics, hate the religion, hate all of that about this state. It feels like it's receding and going backwards, but the music that comes out of here and the musicians and the players that come out of here, I truly do have an affinity for, because there is something about it. There is something specific about it. And whether it's a blues player, a country player, a rock player, or a metal player like my guest today, there's just something specific and something you can't really put your finger on. I'm a musician from Texas, and I sort of innately know when somebody is from Texas. I don't know how to explain it. But Mike DeLeon is my guest today. And Mike plays in legendary Soulfly with legendary Max Cavalera from Sepultura, from Cavalera Conspiracy, if you listen to metal, you know who Max Cavalera is. But he also played with Phil Anselmo and Phil Anselmo&The Illegals, the band he did prior to restarting Pantera. And, I tell Mike that Phil Anselmo&The Illegals did the final Slayer tour, and they were doing like sort of a night with Pantera, basically, where they were playing Pantera songs. And I watched videos of Mike doing that, and man, he just did it dead on. He just played it, in my opinion, he played it perfectly. And I am the world's biggest Zakk Wylde fan. I would love to talk to him on here, even though I get it goes against my mission statement of this podcast a bit, where the guitar players that get the most mention, I wanted to shed light on the other guys, and he is one of those. He is on the cover of Guitar World like every other month, but I love the guy. But he's playing those Pantera songs the way Zakk Wylde would play Pantera songs. Mike DeLeon played them like Dimebag Darrell, because he grew up here in Texas. The guy was ubiquitous here if you were a metal guitar player in Texas, and we talk about that. He comes from humble beginnings. He comes from local bands. His talent spoke loudly for him, and he went from gig to gig to gig, and he kept ascending. It's hard to get out of Texas. Your talent really has to speak for you. We're not lucky enough to be from one of the coasts, but just like there is a Bay Area thrash metal scene or a Florida death metal scene, Texas is over the years, it's taken a long time, sort of developing its own foothold in the metal scene. Famously, sort of reaching a zenith with Pantera in the '90s. Now we have Power Trip, friend of the show, Blake Ibanez band, and now his band Fugitive. We have Frozen Soul. We have a lot of great bands that are coming out of Texas and DFW area and things like that. But also, in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest, death metal band was from Dallas. So they were called Rigor Mortis. I'm departing a bit here from my guest, but I do feel the need to talk about Mike Scascia. Mike Scascia from Rigor Mortis went on to play with Ministry. Al Jorgensen saw how astounding and otherworldly he was, and he sort of cherry picked him to play in Ministry. So all throughout the '90s, Mind's Terrible Thing to Taste tour to their famous Psalm 69 record and on was Mike Scascia playing guitar. Mike was sort of a mentor to me. I grew up worshiping him because I was a huge fan of Rigor Mortis. I've talked about it on here, but Rigor Mortis bass player is Casey Orr. That's how I got the Guar gig. But I grew up worshiping Mike Scascia and just wanting to be him. I wanted to play just like him, which no one in the world could play just like him. There's just something I can't explain. He was the fastest double picker, if that's a word, I think, on the planet. It was like a hummingbird's wings. It was just insane how fast this guy could do it. And every time I was around him, I would just punish him with a bunch of dumb questions and have him try to show me licks and things like that. Mike passed away. Mike went out with a hero's ending. He died on stage in the middle of a lead guitar solo, which, in my personal opinion, I don't see how anyone could go out in a better way. That's how I want to go, man. So that's my little tribute to Mike Scascia. I would love to do a whole episode on him. But, again, I digress. My guest is Mike DeLeon. I didn't know Mike, but I was following his career because I had an affinity for the guy. He was from Texas, and I noticed he was playing with Phil Anselmo. So I was like, how does this kid from San Marcos get that gig? And unfortunately, we met, doing the thing, touring, meeting in an airport, and I introduced myself, and I was really happy that I did because now we're friends, and I get to follow him in real time and text the guy and congratulate him because I'm really proud of him. Not that he needs me to be proud of him, but I truly am, and really happy for him because he is playing with Max Cavalera. He's playing in Soulfly. As you hear, he has a new record coming out real soon. They've been recording it. It's got a bunch of things going on. So check out all things Mike DeLeon and check out my interview with Mike DeLeon. Fight! There's gonna be a fight! What we gonna do? Fight! There's gonna be a fight! Yes! We're gonna go! We're gonna have a fight! Hey, Mike.
What's going on, man?
How you doing? So I just basically talked your head off before we started, and I'm going to have you repeat everything you just talked about. But I remember first hearing about you when Phil Anselmo started the Illegals, the Phil Anselmo and the Illegals. And somebody had told me that the drummer was from Dallas-Fort Worth, which is where I'm from. And I feel like Dallas-Fort Worth makes great metal. I feel like Texas makes great metal. But
Totally agree.
right, from Rigor Mortis to Sedition, which is a very deep cut, Gamacide, all these bands I grew up going to see. But also, of course, Pantera. And then what we have going on now with, like bands like Frozen Soul or Power Trip or Fugitive. But they were like, man, that drummer's from Dallas-Fort Worth, and just being blown away. And then I realized the guitar player was from San Marcos. And not only that, that was you, my guest, Mike DeLeon, or DeLeon.
Deleon.
DeLeon, okay. And being blown away, and then how dead on and exact you were doing those solos, those riffs, because you guys were doing Pantera songs, and then you went on tour with Slayer. Was it Far Beyond Driven record?
Well, we called it a vulgar display of Pantera.
Vulgar display. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That's what
And
it
it was just us doing a round of Pantera songs. It was like a tribute, and it was kind of the jumpstart of what is going on today. And we were just kind of doing like a good chunk of deep cuts and then the big anthems as well. So
Sure.
We got to do that on the final leg of the Slayer tour. It was the final tour, so it was gigantic, for
Yeah.
metal, on all sorts of levels. But playing those songs as precise as we all were in the Illegals, we were all really locked in, and the rehearsals leading into that era of the Illegals was, man, we were literally breathing, eating, sleeping Pantera. The guys in the band, we would wake up and we would compare notes from the night before. It was just,
Wow.
we were really, really trying to bring back the vibe of
Yeah.
what Pantera was doing, and then to be on point and to be crushing as close as we could, and to still have the feel, the let's laugh, let's party, let's have a good time,
Mm-hmm.
but rip, so
Yeah, but ripping.
that's what we were trying to do. And like I said, it really jump started the Pantera today, which is
Right.
on a whole nother level again, so it was really cool to be part of that.
Mission accomplished. And I just remember being blown away with you and thinking like, man, I want to know that guy because the affinity I have for Texas musicians, but there's this specificity of you can tell. Oddly enough, and because I'm from here, I could also tell you were from Texas. It's an odd thing to say, but as a Texas musician, you can just kind of there's something about it. There's just something about it, and I remember thinking, like I said before, Zach Wilde is one of my favorite lead guitar players of all time. I think he's amazing. I love his approach. I love his phrasing. I love everything about him. But he is Zach Wilde. He's going to play like Zach Wilde, and he's playing those songs. We played a festival with him just recently, and he's doing such an amazing job. But it's Zach Wilde playing Pantera songs. You played those songs. You paid such homage to it that when they first announced, I didn't know that Zach Wilde was going to be taking part. I was like, they're obviously just going to have that guy from the Illegals playing with him because he's perfect. And you told me that you actually were integral to sort of the beginning stages. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I was doing this thing in Europe with a bunch of Bay Area dudes. Super amazing thing called the Bay Area International. We were paying homage to the Bay Area, and even in that performance, I was a Texas guy coming out to jam with all these Bay Area dudes. So it was a really big deal for me to be a
Yeah.
part of this. So we went and jammed. We got to jam with all sorts of awesome dudes from all sorts of awesome bands. And I got back to my hotel room and I had this phone call from Philip and the guys in Pantera, which are, Charlie, Rex, Philip, and Zach. Well, Zach was still busy doing some Black Label stuff, and they needed a guitar player to come kind of jumpstart the band. The guys wanted to start getting the ball rolling and, start vibing together, and they needed a guitar player. And I guess my name had come up because it sounded like there was a few names had come up, and I got to hear some of those names, and all the guys were straight awesome shredders, man.
Right.
But I was able to rearrange my schedule, and 2 weeks later, I was walking into the jam room out of Philip's place. I had been out there many times doing the illegals and other projects and stuff, but I didn't even know what to expect. I was wondering, man, who's all gonna be out here? Who's gonna be here? I thought it was just gonna be us dudes, but it was the beginning stages of Pantera. It was already some of the guys, some of the crews. It was like, all right, this is really real. It was pretty wild, and having Grady Champion, who was Dimebag Darrell's
Yeah.
guitar tech, was standing right there, and he handed my guitars over to him. Being a Texas guy, like we're saying, a lot of that weight, even in the illegals, a lot of that weight of Texas was on our shoulders,
Sure.
especially coming from Texas. You really wanted to represent the great state that this state is,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like I said, it was a lot of emotions going on. But being in that rehearsal and being a part of all that, and then seeing Charlie walk in and being like, "Whoa,
Mm-hmm.
this is getting real now." And then
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
Rex
Yeah.
walk in, and then now we're kind of starting to pick up some instruments. And I personally, now that we're talking about this is really cool. I really wanted the other guys in the band, and Philip knew this, but I really wanted the other guys to know, to feel comfortable. I wanted them to be like, just to add ease on my end. I just wanted to be me and just kind of go in there and
Right.
be ready because these guys are going to be ready too. So
Sure.
it was just, like I said, a lot of emotions flying, a
Yeah.
big deal having these people in the room and then the guys in the band. But for
Right.
9 days, we got in there and we
Amazing.
hammered out some Pantera songs.
I
And,
bet.
um, it was cool because everything was recorded in those 9 days. The studio upstairs at Phillips, they were tracking everything, video and music wise. And every day the guys would go back and listen. And
Wow.
and me personally, I would kind of like peek in the room, kind of listen, and then make my way out of the room
Yeah.
because I was just too. I don't know. It was like it was really heavy for me to be in that room with these guys and listening to my guitar tracks on these Pantera songs. But when I was in there listening to certain songs, man, it sounded like the real deal, man. It
Sure.
sounded it sounded like the Pantera, man. It sounded really
Yeah.
cool. Just genuinely, it sounded awesome. It was really close to what the
That's
band
great.
and the vibe was there. Especially after 9 days when it was like day six,
Right.
7, and 8. We were really on fire,
Yeah.
and everything. But things worked out the way they were, and
Right.
Zach came in and he went right on in, and then the
Sure.
next rehearsal and the one after that, I just was there for the first one,
Oh,
but
great.
but it was to me the real deal. We were really there. It was number
Totally.
one. The guys hadn't played together, and so it was a really a big deal for a lot of
I
us.
bet.
And some footage floating around, and it was just really cool to be there representing Texas and
Yeah.
yeah, to be a part of that.
Well, let me just say, they were lucky to have you because, like I said, as a guitar player and as somebody that grew up going to see Pantera, I mean, I'm from Sherman, Texas, which is an hour north of Dallas. They used to play Sherman, this place called the Electric Company. They would play there all the time, ever since the Terry Glaze days, where they were more of a glam band. And for us, we were into Slayer and Creator and Possessed and Death Angel and Dark Angel, and they were still a glam band. So we were like, man, fuck that. And then I remember when Phil joined the band, somebody was like, dude, Pantera here, they're not doing like the glam thing. They were playing Metallica and Slayer covers. And we were like, what the fuck? And then the next time they came through, sure enough, they had Gamma Side opening for them. And we were like, what the fuck is going on? And it was Phil's influence, and sure enough. So I just always remember being a guitar player from North Texas. There was this guy in the 80s that he was Diamond Daryl, and he was winning all the guitar competitions, and he was just ubiquitous. He was just the guy. If you were a guitar player, he was the metal guitar player. Of course there was Billy Gibbons and Stevie Ray Vaughan and all the great Texas rock and roll and blues and country guitar players, but he was the metal guy.
The metal guy.
Yeah. And then closer to home with thrash metal, we had Mike Scoscia, which I could do a whole year on Mike Scoscia because to me that guy was the best. but
Yes.
but I digress. I still feel like those guys were so lucky to have you because of the Texas part of it. You were the only Texan in that room. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Rex is Texan. But you were a Texan guitar player. And for them to get rooted back to, where they started, I think it was really important to have you in there and to start their ground zero being with you, a guy who really, really knew the material. It was really specific and really loved it, and it came from the heart. So I would love to see some of that footage.
Yeah, like I said, it was a pretty surreal moment. I want to talk about it real quick. One more
Mm,
thing. Even in the jam session, there was things that I was still learning, and it was super cool because this time around, I was learning it from Rex, and Rex was like showing me the way Dime would have done it, and obviously I wouldn't have known that. I wasn't
right.
I wasn't there. So when he came in and he'd be like, "No, slow," it was just a slide or a bend. He'd be like, "No, slow that down and bring more groove into that." And I'd be like,
Wow.
and as weird as it just unlocked something in my mind, I'd be like, "Oh, that's exactly right. You're right. That's the way Dime would have played it." I
Wow.
might have been going a second too fast, and it was enough for him to be like, slow that slide. And I was like,
Wow.
okay. I locked it in, and I was like, I get it. And it was little cool things like that. And bends, he was like, no, don't bend it like this. He's like, you need to bend the shit out of it. He was like, you
Yeah.
know, he was like, Dime would have been. He was like, don't just go for it. He's like, really go for it.
Yeah.
Bend,
Take it out of
bend
key. Fuck it.
these two notes. He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's the way Dime would have played it. I said,
Uh-huh.
okay, I get it. I know. So in the process, it was still cool learning from the guys, and just seeing all that aspect of it all was really,
Yeah.
really cool.
That's so special, man. That's so special. And again, there's a certain thing about Texas. I mean, for me personally, I was born and raised here. I have a love-hate thing with it. I hate the politics. I hate the religion. I hate all that shit. But I love the music and I love the musicians. And there's something about that that's very specific to this state. But to back up a little bit, what was your background leading up to playing in a band with Phil Anselmo? So where did that all sort of begin?
When I first entered music, man, I was a really, really young kid. 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years
Wow.
old. My pops was already taking me to the arena concerts. And at the time, it was Poison and Motley Crue and Warrant and David Lee Roth with Steve Vai, being really, really young. So guitars, music, live music was really always a big aspect growing
Sure.
up. So I always had a thing for it. I was always wanted to jam because I was seeing it and I was really into music. Especially CC DeVille from Poison. I was
Right.
big CC fan, man, and getting guitars, picking up a little Fender from the pawn shop, getting a little crate, a little stack from the pawn shop, and getting a job now. I'm 15, and I'm starting to jam with other guys. Music was always there for me. And then my first real band was a Texas band. We were a death metal band. We were called Disfigured, and we
Right.
did the Texas circuit. We played all over Texas and all over outside of Texas. We were really trying to do something. And one day I got a phone call from a big guy I was really into. I was really into SOD, and
Me
Billy
too.
Milano was
Me too.
living in just the thrash crushing riffs, man.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting Billy in Austin. He was working sound at the old Headhunters,
Yep.
and he would work sound for my band time to time, and we became friends. Then one day I got the phone call, asked if I wanted to play guitar for MOD, the new version of that, and that must have been about 12 years ago, 13 years ago now. And we were in MOD. It was my first band that took me overseas. I got to go to a real nice studio in California. We got to do some stuff. And in all that process, we were in a festival in Europe, in Germany, and I got to meet the guys in the Illegals. And Philip was there with, all the guys, and I got to meet Blue, another Texas guy. We were like
Right.
two Mexican dudes, like, dude, what up, dude?
Right. Right.
And Steven, the other guitar player at the time, he was a Houston guy. And half a year went by or so, and they needed a guitar player. And I was working at a fast food spot here in town, and I remember getting the call. They were like, yo, can you come jam next week out here in the Louisiana area
Yeah.
with Phil and the Illegals? And I remember holding up my phone in the air, just like, ah, just like tripping
I
out.
love that.
And
I love that so much.
it was surreal to get that call. And
Yeah.
I remember having to let my job know, guys, I gotta go. This is a big deal. I want to go do this. And just being a kid. And a week later, I was in a room and I was watching Superjoint jam, and it was all the
Right.
guys in Superjoint. They had a rehearsal, and three of those guys were also in the Illegals. So after they were done with Superjoint, now it was like the other half of the day, and now it was Illegals time, and it was just me and the guys, and that's how the Illegals came together. And I
Wow.
kind of came into this room, and I just never left. I just
Right.
kept coming back, and we all just became a big family, and it just went from there. And then years went by, and one thing led to another, and Phil got the phone call to do Pantera again. And we were all at my wedding. He was here in San Marcos. He came to my wedding here in town, and we had a beautiful day. And then a month went by, and he was going to be doing Pantera again, and I was bummed out. I was wanting to keep jamming, but I understood,
Sure.
it's a business, and he wanted to go do his thing, and nothing but support, and then some time went by, and Soulfly was busy, and they had Dino from Fear Factory, who I was a gigantic fan of both Soulfly and Fear Factory, and I've gotten to meet Max a few times and the Cavalera family through Philip and our travels. And then one day they were needing a guitar player, and I got my name in the hat, and then I started learning some songs, and I was posting myself on social media, just
Right.
playing a couple of the deeper cuts, a little more of the harder songs. And then I got the phone call saying, "Hey, do you want to come out and jam with the guys? They have a tour coming up." And I learned about 25 songs. I just was going hard on Soulfly songs and came out there prepared and ready to go, and always
Yeah.
with the best and coolest attitude, just wanting to hang out and jam. And it's just been a family ever since with Soulfly. And now we're just moving on to the future, and it's been a blessing, a metal
I love
blessing,
that.
man, to go from jamming with Philip and the Illegals. And one day, when the time is right, we'll make some music again. But right now, everybody's busy, and everybody's
Yeah.
happy, and everybody's doing music and metal. So I'm super stoked to be jamming with Soulfly, and like I said, a metal blessing, man.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's how all that pretty much came about right there.
That's amazing. A few takeaways there. It's awesome how you've managed to play with two just thrash metal legends, and both kind of do their business and conduct their affairs very similarly. They both, Max Cavalera has a lot of bands. All of them are literally family, whether it's his brother or his sons or whatever it might be, whether, it's Cavalera or it's, Soulfly or Cavalier Conspiracy or whatever it might be. But then Phil is the same way. He teams to use a lot of the same musicians and different, Super Joint was guys and Illegals, and then Down or similar musicians and other, I noticed your co-guitar player from Illegals is also in Scour with him. Is that correct?
Yes, the bass player for the Illegals, my brother
Right.
Derek. Yes, my big brother Derek, who he was in Cattle Decapitation, and
Right.
he was in the Illegals with us, and he always had another band. Like, they had a band, and it was called Scour, and it was like a black metal band. So just
Yeah.
like you said,
It's
Philip is
cool.
just involved,
Cool
and
band.
everybody's just in. Everybody's working together, just doing
Sure.
music and different outlets of music,
Yeah.
and it's awesome. It's
Well,
great.
that's the correlation between the two. You've managed to step into these two different families, and both are doing business pretty similarly, where they sort of keep it in the family. I think that's such a rewarding and interesting thing. But it also says a lot about you as a player, to where you're so much of an asset that these guys, these legends, they want it done right. So they call you and they know it's going to get done right. I was really happy to see you, because we weren't friends yet. I didn't know you. I met you in that airport after, and I introduced myself because I was like, I know who this guy is, and I really wanted to meet you. And I followed your career until then and realized you were doing something like Soulfly. I was like, that makes sense. That guy needs to be, because it was probably inevitable. Pantera was going to happen. They were going to do it with Zach Wild. But to have such a talent like yourself, to not be in a band that's playing festivals and huge tours and with a legend such as Max Cavalera, would be such a disservice if you were just who you are sitting in San Marcos. You need to be out there doing it. And so I was just really happy to see that.
I much appreciate that, man.
Of course.
I love jamming. I love music. I have a really great balance of my family and my music, and I just try to be the best person I can be for both, and when I'm doing music, I give on stage, 1,000% of Texas,
Sure.
man. And I
You
just
have to.
try to go up there and jam and, have fun, and like I said, just rip some ass, man.
You
Have
have
a
to.
good, yeah, have a good time up there doing it, man.
Let's talk about how you do that. So, your gear choices. I know now you seem to be a Dean artist. I might be wrong. We'll get to that. But with going into Philip Anselmo, by the way, those Illegals records are really good. That's such a cool band. Jesus, I didn't get to talk about that earlier. But so what you were doing with that? What gear were you using with that band? Like, let's say on the Slayer tour, what were you using?
Man, that's great. It stirs up the head there to see, to remember everything. But I remember it was 6 years ago. It was a great tour. I was running two Jackson guitars. Both of them were Flying V's. One was the Kevin Bond signature series, and then one was just the green beveled Flying V. And they were both shred attackers, man,
Right.
and super lightweight and just really easy to use. Had the Floyd Rose,
Mm-hmm.
Ernie Ball strings. I've been with Ernie Ball for a really, really long time.
Sure.
EMG pickups in the Jacksons, EMG pickups today in the Deans. Been rolling with EMG for a long, long time. When it came to the head, I was still through and through Mesa Boogie. I would have the Mesa Boogie, the triple wreck running through a couple of Mesa Boogie cabs right
Right.
out to the front of the stage. Me and Steven from the Illegals would always run these Moore pedals. Moore is a company from China, I believe.
Sure.
And all over the world, we would take our GE 200, and that thing, I still have it, and it still stands right there with what I'm using today. And it's a small little pedal but it's crushing. And I used it on the entire Slayer run and all the big arenas and all the big spots. And it's a little pedal, but it has everything we need built right
Wow.
into it. And then we would use the Digitech whammy pedal for some of the dime bag whammy stuff, and some of the stuff, and then the Crybaby wah wah into a noise suppressor, and through the wireless, the Shure wireless, and that would be our rig right there for the big arena shows and everything that we would do with the Illegals.
Well, and I think it's funny, and you did bring your own approach, at least in the gear, because I think people would think what's interesting where you're doing a Pantera set, but you're doing it with famously tube, Mesa Boogie heads, and he was famously the Randall solid state.
Cranking that high end.
Yeah, there wasn't a tube in that head, and all the mids scooped out and everything like that. So that was you bringing your own approach to it for sure. How has your rig changed now? Has Soulfly inspired different changes? Are you having to use different things for Soulfly? Or are you able to just kind of run your same sort of tone?
That's another good question because it's similar, yet it's different. It's not exactly the same. So let's
Mm,
say with all the illegal stuff, we were always in six string. I was a six string Jackson guy.
yeah,
Now I'm with Dean and using seven string for everything. So that was a bigger jump from having to go to
sure.
the six string stuff to the seven string stuff full time. And now I'm running that. I have a my death metal band here in the area, and we're seven string as well, but it's more like technical death metal. We were going from the Pantera stuff to the Soulfly stuff, so to use the seven string was a little bit different, and
Sure.
definitely, I don't want to say more intricate, just more acoustic stuff going on. So I would have to adapt to that. I got a new pedal now. I'm using the Quad Cortex,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is it's like almost the standard now of what a lot of players are using. Where
Hmm.
a lot of guys are using the Quad, and I absolutely love it. So with that, I'm able to do pretty much anything that I need to do, with
Sure.
what I'm working with. When it comes to the Soulfly stuff, both of my guitars, it's good to talk about this. Both my guitars are in B standard. I don't ever really get
Wow.
to get to talk about my tuning. So it's cool to say that I'm in B standard, which means the six strings are in E standard, which is
Right.
great because it's cool to play songs in E again,
Right, right,
and
right.
it's really cool. And then we got the B there for the low stuff, and I use my Digitech whammy, which also has the drop on the other side. So whenever we need to go to the A songs, rather than switching out either of my B guitars, I'll hit the drop tuning, and it just goes a step, and now coming out through the speakers is A. So my
No
guitar stays in
shit.
B, but the tuning will change to A, and it still sounds exactly the same. There's no looseness in the strings, so it doesn't sound
Wow.
any looser. I'm still in B. I'm just coming out A now for a couple of songs or so in the set.
Right.
So
What a
having
cool
the
hack. Yeah.
yeah, having the D tuner there. Actually, when I was in the Illegals, I learned that from the Soulfly guys. I remember the guy saying, "Yo, man, we were having to do a Pantera song in." It was a G tuning, so we were really using a
Hmm.
six string. It was just didn't sound that good because we were having to go so low. And I remember the guy saying, "Yo, there's a pedal that Digitech makes where you can just hit the button and your guitar stays in the same, but you'll get your tuning that you need." And I took that and was like, "What? Where's this pedal? I need this pedal." And
Yeah.
now it's a big factor in the Soulfly stuff because we do a couple of songs in just a lower tuning, just a step. But it's gotten really easy to just hit the little button, and then whenever we're
Mm-hmm.
done, go back to B, and I'm back in B again, and I don't have to
Right.
swap guitars or anything, and it helps out, so it's cool.
So, are you using the quad cortex for your amps as well? Are you using the quad for just the pedals? Because it also sounds like you have an analog pedal thing happening as well with the Digitech. Do you have amps, or are you using the quad for your amps as well?
No, I am still using amps. Okay, so I still have the Mesa Boogie cabs,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm using the Seymour Duncan Power Stage
Sure.
700 for my head, and it's solid state. It's about
Oh,
8
yeah.
pounds, and
Mm-hmm.
it's 700 watts in this head. It's such a beast. And now I'm starting to see many guys out there using the same setup. They use the Power Stage 700 right into the quad cortex, right through the guitar. And the cool thing about the 700 is right in the front. It also has a bass, a mid, and a treble
Right.
in the volume. So, despite having your amps or whatever you're using for tones on the quad, if you're in a room and you want a little bit more bass or you want a little bit more treble, rather than having to mess with the quad, you could just go right over to your head, which is this little 8 pound box of 700 watts, and then
Yeah.
just turn up the bass or turn up the mid, and it works so well. I've used it in so many different theaters to
Yeah.
club size rooms, and sometimes I'm like, man, I need a little bit more of this or I need a little less of this, and rather than go change my tone on the QC, I'll go and mess with the power stage, and
Right.
it has not let me down, man. I have two of them, and one is a backup and one is my main, and I haven't even had to pull out the second one. It's just sits there because the first one runs so well. But it's a good head to have, and it's lightweight. You could throw it in your backpack, and you could travel around the world, and you got your head in your backpack. So
Right.
it's super cool.
I've been quad. I'm back to Kemper now because my only problem with quad that I was finding, and I hope they remedy this, I didn't want to use it as a pedal unit in front of me. So I was using an analog pedal board with the quad behind me, well, in a rack. And I was using the Seymour Duncan Power Stage, but I wasn't using the 700. I believe I was using the 250.
Okay.
And I didn't want the quad in front of me because the switches are so close together. I couldn't specifically step on each little switch. I was stepping on like two and three switches at once. So I had a pedal board in front of me, which I don't have any boutique pedals. I have, Boss and, MXR stuff. And all of that stuff's in the quad. But I was using the quad for like a Marshall head, essentially, and then doing everything else with pedals. And it was like I was using like 0.0001% of the quad. So I went back to Kemper because I have an RJM Mastermind switching unit because the RJM doesn't speak with the quad. Now, whoever's listening, if they know a hack, me and my tech could not get it to work. Quad don't have an external sort of MIDI switcher for their unit. Or if you're on time code, you have it in your rack. And of course, the click track is determining what your pedal changes go. So I didn't have any of those things. So I was like, well, shit. So I went back to Kemper, but I love the quad. I love how the quad sounds.
See, I've had a few friends of mine say the same exact thing. They're like, we love the quad, but the buttons are too close. They're like, man,
Yeah.
I want to switch from this to this, and I end up hitting two of them. They've done the same thing. They're like, we go back, to Kemper, or they'll go to the Headrush or something.
And their technology just doesn't speak with external or aftermarket MIDI switchers. It's at least in my recollection. I could be totally wrong. I could get schooled in the comments, and please let me know. But we've ran all the programs, and it just doesn't seem to be working right now. So, are you just basically using a Mesa profile in your quad?
I'm actually using the EVH 5150
Mm-hmm.
100 watt head through some other pedals, a little
Yeah.
metal zone and a couple of little odds and ends, a little reverb and stuff. But essentially, I'm using that 5150, man. I'm going to be honest with you guys. That 5150, I have a real one as well, and that thing is just a crushing head,
It
mixed
really
with a few little, EQ and whatnot. and a little boost here and there. It's a great guitar tone, and that's what I'm using right now through the power stage. And like I said, I can go EQ from there, but I'm using the 5150 100 watt head in there.
Well, for metal, it's really hard to beat that. And I would imagine it's based on Eddie Van Halen's original Brown Sound Marshall mod. For metal, it's hard to beat. It really is, man.
So you can go from clean to dirty, or you can meet in the middle. It's
Hmm.
got a little bit of everything right in there. It's a crazy crazy little head, man.
Are you using just a factory capture that was already in the quad, or did you actually profile one yourself?
I'm just using the factory capture.
They sound good.
It sounds great,
Yeah.
Like it's cool to get some other heads. I've gotten a few captures on some other heads, and they sound great as well.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm just going with what came right into it, and even other techs. I've talked to a bunch of other guys, and they're like, "No, we're just using the factory with
Hmm.
some stuff that we've added, but it just sounds great. It sounds
It does,
good."
and it's like pretty much in the thing when you buy it. It has it has a Friedman, it has a Marshall, it has a Mason, it has everything in there. It has a 5150, and a
The
few
diesel.
different versions of all the Fenders, diesel. And you could profile your own shit, but unless it's a super boutique thing, you're going to be hard pressed to beat their factory capture that's already in there. Of any of Fractal, of Kemper, of any of them. So the Dean, how did that come about? Your relationship with Dean guitars? Because do you have a signature model now? Am I correct?
We will be working on a signature model most likely this year, and everything's there. So I can't wait for that to get started on here soon. The Dean thing came about right when the Illegals were getting ready to do the big Slayer tour, or right around all that, maybe right after that. We
Mm-hmm.
were in Orlando and we hooked up with Chris Canella, who everyone knows Chris. He was over at Fender for a while, and now he's over with Dean, and he's been doing an excellent job taking over and helping all the artists out and getting the ball going over there. He came out to one of our shows that we were going to be doing out in the area, and he brought me a Dean guitar, and the relationship has just been excellent ever since
Awesome.
then. The guitars are super great. They play so well. I have various projects, various bands I jam with, and they've always been in my corner for something that I need. And if I need a guitar, or if I need parts for a guitar, I was just in Europe and I had something break on one of my guitars and I needed something, and I hit up Dean and was like, "Yo, man, I need these parts." Within a week or so, I was in a whole different country. Get to the hotel, and the parts are there. So,
Wow.
they've always been reliable. The guitars are shredders.
Yeah.
So many other great players are playing Dean guitars. So it's great to see the camaraderie, between
Yeah.
all of us flying the Dean flag. And it's
Yeah.
in metal guitar players. It's really really cool. You see them out and about, and
Sure.
so I've been with
Well,
them now, probably going about 4 or 5 years, and
oh,
I
that's
can't
great.
see myself playing anything else.
Well, it's like Kerry King has his signature now there. I saw that John Dene from Anthrax. And yeah, it seems like people are definitely really happy with those guitars. That's really great, man. And congrats. I looking forward to seeing your signature model. How's it been playing with such a legend like Max Cavalera? I'm such a huge Sepultura fan. I'm such a huge Cavalera conspiracy fan. Soulful, everything the guy's ever done to all of his side projects, they're all good. Everything he does is good. So how's that been?
Okay, so let's talk about all his projects real quick. I just want to say all his projects are metal, which
Yeah, they
is
are.
great,
They
which
are.
is Max. You know, being with him now, going on the third year, being in a bus and in a confined space, that dude lives and breathes metal. You
Yeah.
know, and he lives and breathes family. He's surrounded by family, and he's surrounded by metal. Now, getting up on stage and jamming with Max, I'm glad I get to talk about this. I don't think I've ever got to talk about this right here. And friends of mine will ask me about this, and I'll tell them, but to talk about it and get everybody gets to hear it, man. It's a metal dream come true, man.
Right.
you know, just
I love
just
that.
like all of us, we all grew up on Sepultura. I was a
Yeah,
kid jamming
absolutely.
Inner Self and Arise and Beneath the Remains, and Chaos AD and Roots.
Hmm.
I was just a kid, and all my buddies, my wife. she was in a band and they did a Sepultura cover, you know, so it's just come full circle now to get up on stage. When it first started, it was crazy and it hasn't changed. I get up there and I'm like, he comes over and we lock in these little 15-second nuanced guitars where it's just crushing
Mm-hmm.
triplets. I told him on the European tour, I walked over, I think it was the last night of the tour, and I said, Max, I just want to let you know, man, it's really special jamming with you, man. Those little parts that we get to lock in, these little things, I said, they're a real big deal to me, man. I really enjoy jamming these metal parts, you know, together. So it's cool, man.
That's
He's
so
a
great.
guitar legend. He's written some of the heaviest riffs
He really
known
has.
the man, you know, so it's cool. And I don't want to talk too much because it's kind of for the Cavaliers to do, but the new Soulfly is coming, and I'm just gonna say it's gonna be heavy. You know,
Good.
it's gonna be
as
heavy, man,
as
and
well it should be.
yeah, it's gonna be heavy, and I'll let them talk about it. You know, when the time is right. You
Sure.
know, but it's coming, and it's just been an honor jamming with the guys, and I can't see myself, you know, going anywhere else. I just want to
That's
keep
great.
moving forward with Soulfly,
Congrats,
and
man.
I will say real quick, next month it'll be my very first time. I have not announced it. I was gonna make a Facebook post or Instagram post today, but I didn't get the time to yet. But next month in February, I'm gonna be going out with Max and Igor, the Cavalera brothers, and they're going to be doing a month-long U.S. tour. It'll be my first tour as a tech. I get to go out and
Wow.
work for my bro Travis, who is my tech in Soulfly. It's going to be cool. He techs for me while Max is busy with Soulfly.
Right.
Now Max will be busy with Cavalera, and I get to go tech for him, and he gets to play guitar, and
Oh,
I
that's
get
gonna
to,
be
you
so
know,
cool.
it'll be my first tech tour, and it's gonna be it's a big deal to be on a tour and a bus with the brothers now. You know,
Yeah.
it's gonna be Max and Igor, and to be there nightly to see them jamming together, and then Max's son Igor, little Igor, will be on bass, and then my bro Travis will be on guitar. So
Oh,
two
that's gonna be
guitars,
so
bass, and
fun.
drums. It'll be a treat to go out and see it from this aspect.
Yeah.
Change some guitars, change some strings, and be there to support my bro and watch him shred, and then watch the brothers do their thing, man. So
That's so
it's a
cool.
big family in the Cavaleras, and then you know this summer Soulfly will have some shows and get back up there and continue where we left off, man.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
great.
you heard it here, folks. You know, when you said that about him with family, you are totally right. So Soulfly, one of his sons is the drummer in Soulfly. His other son is the bassist in Cavalera. His brother is the drummer in Cavalera, famously also Ego Cavalera, who is also was in Sepultura. So yeah, he really does keep it in the family. And you know, we played a festival, it got rained out after they played, and it was still, we were supposed to play and Machine Head were supposed to play, and we didn't get to, but we all got to see them play. And they've been re-recording the early Sepultura records, and they were playing, I can't remember which one at this festival, but holy shit, it was amazing. And then they do, you know, Sepultura classics, they do Chaos AD, they did Arise, they did, it's just so awesome to see that.
It is. It is. Like I got to see them last year a couple times on some off dates. Just go to San Antonio and get to watch the brothers play. And I told Igor, Big Igor, I was like after the show, I was like, dude, you are so on it. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
he was like, I drink a Monster or I drink a Red Bull. So I'm like, dude, you are on it,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. It's like
They
it's not just that Red Bull, man. You're Igor
yeah,
Cavalera, you know.
he's still shredding, you know, and it's
Yeah.
great. So I'm really looking forward to being on the backside and still being a big part, you know, just doing my thing and getting to see the guys up there doing their
Yeah.
thing nightly will be great. And, you know, a lot going on behind the scenes, you know, as well. So there's a lot to look forward to, man, and trying to keep the metal alive, trying to represent Texas. I tell everybody, always trying to represent the great state, man, and have
Yeah.
fun and jam and be cool about it, man. You know, so it's all we can do.
You know, I have to correct myself. They were doing the Morbid Visions record. I'm so anal about weird shit, but they were doing Morbid Visions, which is a great record. Anyway,
Yes.
it's such a great record. Well, real quick at the end, I won't keep you much longer because you have children and I'll keep talking to you all day. Have you, I ask everybody this, have you had one that got away? Have you ever gotten a piece of gear stolen, or you lost it, or you hawked it, or something that you really wish you hadn't have lost?
Man, that's a good question. Is there a
Because
piece
we
of
all
gear?
have.
All right. There's gonna be an Ibanez guitar that I traded for a Schecter. I got a Schecter
Okay.
Hellraiser, and I gave the guy, man, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a RG 370. It
Uh,
was an old RG series, but
right.
it was a dear guitar. You know, it meant a lot to me, and it was a thin neck shredder. You know, I had it since high school, and I was kind of moving on to some heavier stuff, so I needed a 7 string. This guy had a really nice guitar, so we just did a swap. But man, that Ibanez was something that I wish I still had with me today because it was a one of a kind, man. It was such a nice guitar.
I love those shredder necks, man. I wish, I'm a Les Paul guy, I'm a Gibson guy, but man, if I could have a Les Paul with like the thin, width and, just those easy shredder necks. God damn it, those go fast necks. They're so perfect. You know what I mean? I love them
Oh, I
so
know what you
much.
mean. I love me a nice warm Les Paul neck. I just got me my first Gibson Les Paul Studio 2 or 3 years ago, and I busted out for studio stuff. I do a lot of studio stuff, and
Yeah,
I just busted out for certain solos or little warm
sure.
parts that I'm looking for. But I love those necks. You know, definitely a little thicker, but they got that thickness, that rip as well, man. You know, so it's cool too. I like those guitars.
I have weird tiny hands, so I'm always looking for like the Norland era Gibson necks, like the 70s into the 80s. They're thin, and I just love them. It's not a popular opinion, but I am challenged. I have small hands. Well, anyway, Mike, man, hey, dude, thank you so much, fellow Texan. I so appreciate this, and like I said, I followed your career, and I'm just really happy for you, man. And the bands you're playing in could not be any luckier to have you play with them. You're such a great talent, man.
Thank you so much, man. And anytime, let's try to meet up sometime soon. Let's hang
Yes,
out. We can get a burger and just talk some more gear, man. I'm always up for it.
I'm down the street. I would love it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me, brother.
Okay, man. Take care, buddy. I asked Mike what was a song that he would like me to end with, and as you heard, he also played in MOD with Billy Milano. So that's three thrash metal legends this guy's played with. He's played with Billy Milano from SOD and MOD. He played with Phil Anselmo, and now he's playing with Max Cavalera. I had mentioned that he'd played with those two guys, but I was totally forgetting it. My very first band was doing SOD and MOD covers. We didn't even have a drummer. Anyway, so Mike chose the song off of the Busted Broke in American MOD record, which I believe is the last record, and it's a song called Fight. And you'll hear this guy's right hand is just amazing. It's just the syncopation it takes to play real metal, real thrash metal, real death metal is just otherworldly. And Mike does it amazingly. So you can hear some of his lead work in this. You can hear his amazing riffing, his amazing right hand. But, like I said, go down a YouTube rabbit hole for Mike DeLeon and Phil Anselmo and the Illegals because, geez, man, what a cool band that was or is. I mean, who knows if they'll be revisiting that, but, I hope they do because those were great records. And I love listening to Mike DeLeon play. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed it myself. I'm going to thank the folks at Jim Dunlop and MXR Pedals for doing all they do. Check out what they're doing at jimdunlop.com. And my other folks at DistroKid, they are helping us, the artists, get our stuff on the streaming platforms. So check them out, DistroKid. Thanks for listening, folks. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Fight! There's gonna be a fight! What we gonna do? Fight! 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 Fight!